The valley had gone silent in a way that made seasoned operators check their ammunition twice. 4 Navy SEALs, call signs Reaper 1 through Reaper 4, pressed themselves against the crumbling mud wall of what used to be a goat herder's compound. The Hindu Kush mountains rose around them like the teeth of some ancient trap, and somewhere in the maze of ridgelines and dry riverbeds, 73 hostiles were closing the noose. The mission had been textbook until it wasn't. Extract a defector with intel on a chemical weapons cache, get out before dawn, let the night belong to the Americans like it always did. But the defector had talked, or someone had listened, and now the valley knew they were there. Reaper 1, a Virginian named Marcus Holt with a jaw like carved granite and eyes that had seen 3 tour too many, keyed his radio with a hand that didn't shake. Broken bow, this is Reaper 1. We are compromised. I say again, compromised. 70+ hostiles, 3 sides moving to envelope. Request immediate CAS over. The response came back clipped, professional, empty of hope. Reaper 1, broken bow. Closest air is 23 mics out. Apache package diverted to troops in contact, Kandahar. Checking for available assets. Stand by. 23 minutes. Holt didn't bother doing the math. His teammate, a Californian everyone called Bishop, was already setting claymores at the north approach. The other 2, Vargas and Kim, were redistributing ammunition, that quiet ritual of men who know what's coming. The walls around them were pockmarked from wars that predated their grandfathers. Empires had died in these valleys. The thought was not comforting. Then the radio crackled again, a different voice this time, and something in Holt's chest tightened. Reaper 1, broken bow. We have 1 asset available for immediate tasking. Call sign Hazard 11. A-10 Warthog solo sortie already airborne on patrol. Pilot is available. Acknowledge if you accept support over. There was a pause, almost imperceptible, a breath of hesitation in the word available that Holt caught but didn't understand. Behind him, Bishop let out a low whistle. A hog out here, alone, Holt keyed the radio. Broken bow, Reaper 1, we accept anything, get her here now. Another pause, then, Reaper 1, Hazard 11 is inbound your position. ETA 14 minutes. Call sign is Hazard, pilot name is Cade. Call sign Widow, she'll talk you through it. Broken bow out. Widow. The word hung in the air like smoke. Holt exchanged a glance with Bishop, whose expression said everything. 14 minutes. The sound of engines, distant and hungry, began to echo off the mountains, not from the friendlies, from the enemy. The technical trucks came first. White Toyota Hiluxes with Soviet-era machine guns welded to the beds, the kind of improvised war machines that had outlasted empires and defense budgets. They kicked up dust trails that looked like the valley itself was bleeding. Holt counted 6 vehicles, maybe more behind the ridgeline, and his stomach did the cold calculus every operator learned to do. 70 hostiles, 4 Americans, 14 minutes until air support. It wasn't math. It was countdown to obituary. He pressed his eye to the scope of his rifle, watching fighters dismount from the trucks with the easy confidence of men who had done this before, who had cornered American soldiers and lived to brag about it. They wore mismatched fatigues, sneakers, chest rigs stuffed with magazines. Some carried RPGs. One had a belt-fed PKM machine gun slung across his back like a coat. Bishop slid up beside him, binoculars raised. Setting up a base of fire on the North Ridge, 200 meters. They know we can't move. Vargas, the team medic, was on the radio with broken bow, feeding coordinates, updating the tactical picture no one needed updated. Everyone knew what this was. Kim, the youngest, barely 26, methodically loaded magazines, his hands steady, his face empty. Holt had seen that look before, the look of a man making peace. Then the radio crackled and a new voice cut through the static. Female. Calm. The kind of calm that comes from flying alone at 20,000 feet with nothing but engine noise and your own thoughts. Reaper 1, Hazard 11. I'm 14 mics out, Angels 20 tracking your position. Understand you have 70+ hostiles in 3 groups attempting envelope. Confirm. Holt keyed his mic. Hazard, Reaper 1, confirmed. North Ridge is primary threat. They're setting up crew-served weapons. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they're in effective range. There was a pause, and Holt could almost hear her thinking, the gears turning behind that composed voice. Copy, Reaper. I'm carrying 6 Mavericks, full load of 30 Mike and enough hate to ruin someone's afternoon. Talk me onto target. What's your situation on the ground? Holt exhaled. Hazard, we're in a compound, single-story mud walls about 30 meters square. No roof. North Ridge is highest priority. After that, we've got dismounts moving through the wadi to our east, and more trucks holding back southwest. Another pause. Then, Reaper 1, I need you to mark your position. Strobe, IR, smoke, I don't care, but I need to know where not to put 30 millimeter. This valley all looks the same from up here. Bishop was already pulling the infrared strobe from his kit, a small device that blinked invisible light only visible through night vision or targeting pods. He tossed it onto the roof of the compound's single remaining wall. Holt keyed the mic. Hazard marking now. IR strobe on the structure. We're inside the box. Do not engage within 50 meters of the strobe. The voice that came back was measured, professional, but there was something underneath it, something Holt couldn't name. Not fear, not eagerness, something older. Reaper 1, I have your strobe. Good mark. Stand by for talk on. I'm coming in from the southeast, high angle, so keep your heads down and your ears open. When I say break, you break. Understood? Holt almost smiled. Almost. Understood. Hazard will stay out of your way. Bishop glanced at him, eyebrows raised. She sounds competent. Kim, loading his last magazine, muttered, She sounds like she's done this before. Vargas said nothing, just stared at the ridge where shadows were moving, spreading out like infection. The sound reached them then, distant but growing, a low growl that didn't belong to the mountains. Not the whine of jets or the chop of rotors, something deeper, mechanical, brutal, the kind of sound that made you think of iron and fury and the men who built weapons to survive, not to win. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, known to everyone who had ever served as the Warthog, was not a beautiful aircraft. It was a flying gun platform built around a 30-millimeter Gatling cannon that could shred tanks, a plane so ugly and so beloved that pilots called it the devil's own crop duster. It flew low, slow, and loud, and when it fired, the sound was like the sky tearing itself apart. Holt had heard it once before in Fallujah, and the memory was seared into his brain. Bishop saw it first, a dark silhouette against the fading twilight, wings slightly forward, engines mounted high to avoid ground fire, the nose long and blunt like the face of something that had stopped caring about elegance. There, Bishop breathed. Jesus, there she is. The A-10 banked, carving a wide arc around the valley, and Holt could see the shape of it now, the twin engines, the straight wings designed for loiter time, the payload slung beneath. It looked slow. It looked clumsy. It looked like salvation. The radio crackled. Reaper 1, Hazard, I have eyes on your targets. North Ridge, I'm seeing 8, maybe 9 dismounts with crew-served weapons. Confirm. Holt pressed his eye to his scope. Confirmed. Hazard, they're digging in. There was a pause, then the voice came back, colder now, sharper. Not for long. Reaper 1, I'm rolling in hot. Danger close, 30 seconds. Keep your people inside the compound and away from the north wall. Do you copy? Holt felt his heart hammering. Danger close. The words every ground soldier knew. Close air support so near to friendly positions that the margin for error was measured in meters, not miles. Copy. Hazard, we're buttoned up. You're cleared hot. The A-10 dropped. It didn't dive like a fighter jet, all speed and drama. It descended with the patience of something that had all the time in the world and knew you didn't. The nose dipped, the wings leveled, and for a moment the plane seemed to hang in the air, suspended between sky and earth, a predator deciding where to bite. Then the gun fired. The sound was not a sound. It was a physical thing, a vibration that traveled through the ground and into your bones, a deep tearing brrrrrt that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The mechanical roar of 30-millimeter depleted uranium rounds, leaving the barrel at 4,000 rounds per minute. Holt had forgotten what it felt like. Bishop hadn't. He was grinning, a manic, disbelieving grin pressed against the mud wall with his hands over his ears. Kim's mouth was open. Vargas had stopped moving entirely, frozen mid-reach for his radio. On the north ridge, the earth came apart. Dust, rock, and fire erupted in a line 50 meters long, a zipper of destruction that walked across the position where the machine gun team had been setting up. Bodies disappeared. Trucks disintegrated. The PKM gunner, the one with the belt fed, simply ceased to exist, erased in a heartbeat of cannon fire that left nothing but smoke and the ringing certainty that something unstoppable had arrived. The A-10 roared overhead, low enough that Holt could see the panels on the underside, the scarred paint, the tail number stenciled in black. Then it was past, climbing, banking hard to the left, wings tilting as it came around for another run. The radio crackled. Reaper 1, hazard. North Ridge is neutralized. I'm seeing movement in the Wadi east side. 12 to 15 dismounts moving fast. You want me to hit them or do you need them softened? Holt was still trying to process what he'd just seen. His ears rang. His hands were shaking not from fear but from adrenaline, from the sudden violent relief of watching your enemy turn to vapor. He keyed the mic. Hazard, hit them now. There was no pause this time. Reaper 1, rolling in. Keep down. The A-10 came in lower this time, almost skimming the ridgeline, and when the gun fired again, the sound was closer, louder, a physical hammer blow that made the air itself flinch. The Wadi erupted. Rocks the size of cars tumbled. Men scattered, running, firing blindly into the sky with rifles that might as well have been slingshots. One of them, braver or stupider than the rest, raised an RPG, the tube balanced on his shoulder, his face set in concentration. He never got the shot off. The A-10's cannon found him first. A half-second burst that turned him, and the three men beside him into red mist. The technical trucks on the southwest side, the ones that had been holding back, suddenly weren't holding back anymore. Engines roared. They surged forward, trying to close the distance, trying to get under the A-10's firing angle, trying to do anything except sit still and die. It was the wrong decision. Holt watched through his scope as the A-10 adjusted, as the nose tracked, as the pilot made some calculation in her head that involved speed, distance, and the cold arithmetic of ordnance. Then the wings flashed and something dropped away, sleek and finned, with a small rocket motor that ignited halfway to the ground. Maverick missile, AGM-65. The kind of weapon designed to kill tanks but perfectly happy to settle for trucks. The first technical exploded so violently that pieces of it landed 100 meters away. The second truck swerved, trying to evade, and the missile corrected in midair. A tiny adjustment of fins, and then it was gone too, replaced by a fireball that climbed into the sky like a man reaching for God. The third truck stopped. Just stopped. The driver threw open the door and ran, and the men in the back scattered, abandoning the vehicle, the machine gun, everything. Holt almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The A-10 circled, a lazy orbit high above the valley, and the radio came to life again. This time the voice was different, still calm, still professional, but there was an edge now, a sharpness that Holt recognized. The voice of someone who had just killed a lot of people and was deciding how to feel about it. Reaper 1, hazard. I'm showing multiple squirters, movers heading west and north. I can track them, but I'm getting low on Mavericks. What's your status? Holt looked around the compound. Bishop was checking his ammo. Kim was staring at the sky, his face pale. Vargas had the radio pressed to his ear, coordinating with broken bow. Holt keyed the mic. Hazard, Reaper 1, we're still green. Casualties light. How much gas you got? There was a pause, longer this time, and when the voice came back it was quieter. Reaper 1, I've got about 40 mics of loiter time before I need to RTB. I can stay on station, keep them off you, but I'm not going to be able to hold this valley forever. You need exfil or you planning to walk out? Holt exhaled. He looked at Bishop, who shrugged. Vargas was nodding, already on the radio with broken bow, arranging for a helicopter that would take another hour to arrive, maybe more. Holt keyed the mic. Hazard, we need you to hold them. Just keep them scattered, keep them scared. Help's coming, but it's not fast. Another pause. Then, soft, almost to herself, scared. Yeah, I can do scared. The A-10 stayed. For 40 minutes it carved loops in the sky above the valley, a dark circling shape that the enemy learned to watch for, to fear, to run from. Every time a group of fighters tried to regroup, tried to move back toward the compound, the warthog would drop and the gun would sing and the earth would erupt. It was methodical, patient. The kind of air support that didn't just destroy the enemy but broke their will, made them understand that the sky was no longer neutral, that something with teeth had claimed it. Holt watched through his scope as men abandoned weapons, as they threw down rifles and ran, as the organized assault dissolved into panicked retreat. He watched the A-10 bank and turn, watched the way it moved, not fast but deliberate, and he started to understand something about the pilot. This wasn't her first time. This wasn't even her 10th. There was a rhythm to it, a practiced ease, the way a surgeon moves through a procedure she's done 100 times. Bishop said it first, his voice low. She's keeping them pinned without wasting ammo. She's rationing her gun runs, smart. Kim, who had stopped looking pale and started looking something closer to awe, nodded. Who is she? Vargas, still on the radio, glanced over. Call sign widow. That's all Broken Bow would say. Apparently she's been flying solo patrols out of Bagram for 6 months. No wingman, just her and the hog. Holt frowned. No wingman, that's not standard. Vargas shrugged. Broken Bow said she's particular, doesn't play well with others, but she's got more combat hours than anyone in the squadron. 312 confirmed sorties. They let her fly alone because she's better that way. Bishop let out a low whistle. 312. Jesus. The radio crackled. Reaper 1 Hazard, I'm picking up chatter on enemy freak. They're calling you the devil's bait and me the devil's hand. Thought you'd appreciate that. Holt couldn't help it. He smiled, the first real smile in hours. He keyed the mic. Hazard, Reaper 1, I'll take it. How's your fuel? There was a pause, then low, real low. I've got maybe 10 mics before I have to bug out. Your exfil. Holt glanced at Vargas, who held up both hands. 20 minutes, too long. Holt keyed the mic, and his voice was steady, the voice of a man who had run out of options and found peace with it. Hazard, we're 20 out. Can you give us 10 and then go? We'll hold until the bird gets here. Silence. Long enough that Holt thought maybe the radio had died, maybe she'd already left. Then the voice came back, and it was different now, stripped of the professional veneer, raw in a way that made Holt's chest tight. Reaper 1, I'm not leaving you. The words hung in the air, and Holt felt something shift in the valley, in the sky, in the space between what was professional and what was personal. He keyed the mic carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. Hazard, you don't have the fuel. You bug out now, you can make it back to Bagram. You stay, you're going to flame out over hostile territory. There was no response. The A-10 circled, silent, a dark shape against the bruised sky. Then quietly, almost too quiet to hear, Reaper 1, how old are you? Holt blinked. Bishop stared at him. Kim's mouth opened. It was the kind of question that didn't belong on a combat frequency, the kind of question that made you realize the person on the other end wasn't just a call sign in a plane. Holt keyed the mic. Hazard, I'm 34. A pause. Then, I'm 41. I've been flying since I was 22. I've lost 3 birds, 2 wingmen, and a husband. You know what call sign widow means, Reaper 1? Holt said nothing. His hand was still on the mic, but he didn't press it. The voice continued, softer now, the kind of soft that comes from exhaustion and memory. It means I'm the one who comes home. It means I bury people. It means I've spent 19 years watching good men die because air support was 30 seconds late, or because the intel was bad, or because the brass didn't want to risk an asset. You know what I'm not going to do, Reaper 1? Holt closed his eyes. He knew. He already knew. I'm not going to let 4 SEALs die in a valley because I was worried about fuel. I've got 10 minutes. I'm staying for 20. And if I have to put this hog down in a riverbed and walk back to Bagram, then that's what I'm doing. Do you copy? Holt opened his eyes. Around him, his team was staring, and he could see it in their faces, the comprehension, the weight of what they were hearing. A pilot willing to trade her life for theirs. A pilot who had already made the choice. He keyed the mic, and his voice cracked just for a second, just enough. Hazard, we copy, thank you. There was no response. Just the sound of the A-10's engines circling, a promise carved into the sky. And then from the east the sound of rotor blades. The cavalry, late but coming. The U-60 Black Hawk appeared over the ridgeline, fast and low, flanked by 2 Apache gunships that looked like insects made of rage. The cavalry had arrived, but it was the A-10 that had held the line, that had bought the time, that had kept the wolves at bay. Holt keyed the radio to Broken Bow. Broken Bow, Reaper 1. Exfil bird is on station. We're moving to extract. Advise Hazard she is cleared to RTB. The extraction was textbook. The Black Hawk flared, the ramp dropped, and the 4 SEALs sprinted across the compound, boots pounding dirt, gear rattling. every nerve alive with the knowledge that they were seconds from safety. The Apache circled overhead, their chain guns tracking, but there was nothing left to shoot. The valley had gone quiet again, a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes after a storm. Holt was the last one on the bird, his hand gripping the frame as the crew chief hauled him inside, and as the Black Hawk lifted, banking hard to the south, he craned his neck to look up. The A-10 was still there, circling, a lone silhouette against the darkening sky. It should have left 5 minutes ago. It was still there. Holt grabbed the headset from the crew chief, toggled to the air-to-air frequency, and keyed the mic. "Hazard, Reaper 1, we're off the ground. You can go now. Get yourself home." There was a pause, long enough that Holt thought maybe she hadn't heard, or maybe she was already too far away. Then the radio crackled and the voice came back, tired now, drained but steady. "Reaper 1, Hazard, glad you made it. I'll see you on the other side. Hazard 1-1 RTB." The A-10 banked, wings tilting, and began to climb, heading southwest toward Bagram. Holt watched it go, watched it disappear into the haze, and something in his chest felt hollow. Bishop leaned over, shouting over the rotor noise. "We need to find out who she is. Buy her a drink, something." Holt nodded, but he didn't say anything. He was thinking about the voice, about the words, about the woman who had chosen to stay. The Black Hawk climbed, and the valley fell away below, a patchwork of shadows and smoke, a place that had almost become a grave. Holt closed his eyes and let the exhaustion take him, but even in the darkness behind his eyelids he could hear it. The sound of the A-10's gun, the tearing roar that had saved their lives. 14 minutes. That's all it had taken. 14 minutes and the world had changed. When they landed at Bagram 2 hours later, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and blood. Holt climbed off the Black Hawk with legs that barely worked, his body running on fumes and adrenaline debt. The rest of the team was silent, the kind of silence that comes after you've stared into the void and someone pulled you back. The debrief could wait. The paperwork could wait. Holt walked across the tarmac, past the rows of helicopters and cargo planes, past the blast walls and sandbag bunkers, until he found what he was looking for. The A-10 flight line. There were 3 warthogs parked in a row, their noses pointing toward the taxiway, ground crews swarming around them with fuel hoses and tool carts. Holt walked down the line, reading tail numbers, looking for the one he'd seen in the valley. He found it at the end, partially hidden behind a maintenance truck. Tail number 792. The paint was scarred, the panels pitted with small arms fire that maintenance hadn't bothered to patch yet. The nose art, faded but still visible, showed a black widow spider with red hourglasses on its abdomen. Beneath it, in stenciled letters, "Widow." Holt stood there staring at the plane, at the gun barrel that protruded from the nose like the stinger of some enormous wasp, and he felt something he couldn't name. Respect, gratitude, awe. A voice behind him, quiet and female, said, "You one of the SEALs?" Holt turned. The woman standing there was not what he expected. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and a flight suit that hung loose on a frame that looked like it had forgotten to eat for a month. Her face was angular, sharp-featured, with lines around her eyes that came from squinting into the sun and not enough sleep. She looked 41 going on 60. She also looked like she could stare down a freight train and make it blink. Holt straightened. "Yes, ma'am. Reaper 1, Marcus Holt." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes dark and unreadable, then nodded. "Kate Ashoka, call sign Widow. You're welcome, by the way." Holt almost laughed, almost. "I was going to say thank you, but you beat me to it." Kate Ashoka Widow shrugged, her hands in her pockets, her gaze drifting to the A-10 behind him. "Yeah, well, it's my job. You did yours, I did mine. We all go home." But there was something in her voice, a flatness, a distance, that made Holt realize she didn't quite believe it. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You stayed. You didn't have the fuel and you stayed." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment the mask slipped and he saw the exhaustion beneath, the weight of 312 sorties, the ghosts of men she hadn't saved. "I had enough," she said, but they both knew it was a lie. Holt nodded slowly. "Well, for what it's worth, you saved 4 lives today, mine included. I won't forget that." Cade's expression softened, just a fraction, just enough. "Good, don't, because next time I might not be around." She turned to go, but Holt called after her. "Widow, why do you fly alone?" She stopped, her back to him, and for a long moment she didn't answer. Then, without turning, "Because I'm better alone." The debriefing happened 3 hours later in a windowless room that smelled like stale coffee and the accumulated stress of 1,000 tactical reviews. Holt sat across from a lieutenant colonel he'd never met, a man with iron-gray hair and the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from disapproval. The colonel's name was Merrick, and he had the bearing of someone who had spent more time behind desks than in the field but still thought he understood both. Beside him sat an intelligence officer, a major named Ruiz, and a captain from the Air Force Liaison Office who looked bored. They asked the expected questions: how many hostiles, what kind of weapons, how close the danger close had been. Holt answered mechanically, his mind still half in the valley, half on the flight line where he'd met a woman who flew alone. When they got to the air support, Merrick leaned forward. "The A-10 pilot, call sign Widow, Captain Ashoka. You had direct comms with her?" Holt nodded. "Yes, sir. She was on station for nearly 50 minutes, probably saved our lives 6 times over." Merrick's expression didn't change. "Captain Ashoka is an exceptional pilot, but she's also been flagged for psychological evaluation. Twice. Command is concerned about her lone wolf tendencies. Did she exhibit any behavior that seemed erratic, unstable, or outside standard CAS protocols?" Holt felt his jaw tight. He glanced at Bishop, who was sitting beside him, and saw the same anger reflected there. He chose his words carefully. "Sir, with respect, Captain Ashoka was professional, competent, and effective. She stayed on station beyond her fuel margin to keep us covered. If that's erratic, then I'll take erratic over standard any day." Merrick's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly the kind of behavior we're concerned about, Chief. Putting herself at risk unnecessarily. Making decisions based on emotion rather than tactical reality. She's been flying solo for 6 months because no one wants to be her wingman. The last pilot who flew with her filed a complaint, said she was reckless, that she took unnecessary risks." Holt felt something cold settle in his chest. He leaned forward, his voice low and hard. "Sir, I don't know what her last wingman said, and frankly I don't care. What I know is that she kept 70 hostiles off our position, expended ordnance with precision, and made calls that kept 4 Americans alive. If that's reckless, then the word doesn't mean what I think it means." Merrick held his gaze for a long moment, then leaned back. "Your opinion is noted, Chief. Dismissed." Outside, in the cool night air, Bishop lit a cigarette and offered one to Holt, who shook his head. Bishop exhaled smoke. "They're going to crucify her." Holt stared at the mountains, dark shapes against the stars. "Not if I can help it." The next morning, Holt found Cade Ashoka in the most unlikely place, the base chapel. It was a small building, tucked between a supply depot and a motor pool, with a wooden cross over the door and a sign that listed service times in 3 languages. Holt pushed open the door and found her sitting in the front pew, still in her flight suit, her head bowed, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. He hesitated, unsure if he should intrude, but she spoke without looking up. "You're not subtle, Reaper One. I heard you come in." Holt walked down the aisle and sat in the pew behind her, giving her space. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Cade turned slightly, enough that he could see her profile. In the dim light she looked older, more tired, the lines around her eyes deeper. "You're not interrupting. I don't pray. I just sit. It's quiet." Holt nodded. He understood quiet. "I talked to command about yesterday." She let out a bitter laugh, soft and without humor. "Let me guess. They're concerned. They think I'm unstable. They want me grounded." Holt didn't answer, which was answer enough. Cade turned to face him fully, and her eyes were hard. "You know what the problem is, Reaper One. The problem is that I'm good, really good. Better than most of the guys in the squadron, and they know it. But I don't play the game. I don't schmooze with the brass. I don't laugh at the right jokes. I don't pretend that this war is some grand adventure. I do my job. I keep people alive. And that makes them uncomfortable." Holt met her gaze. "Why, Widow?" She looked away, back toward the altar, and for a long time she didn't answer. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, stripped of the armor. "My husband was a pilot, F-16. We met at flight school, got married young, did the whole Air Force power couple thing. He was deployed to Iraq in 2006. I was stateside, flying training missions, waiting for my own deployment. He took ground fire over Fallujah." AAA, his jet went down and he didn't eject. They never found the body. She paused, her hands tightening in her lap. I got the call at 3 in the morning. 2 officers at my door, hats in their hands. I knew before they said a word, I just knew. And I remember thinking, standing there in my pajamas, that the worst part wasn't that he was gone. The worst part was that I hadn't been there. I hadn't been in the sky with him. I couldn't help. Holt felt something crack in his chest. He said nothing, just listened. After that, I requested combat deployment. They tried to talk me out of it, said I needed time to grieve, but I didn't want time. I wanted to fly. They sent me to Afghanistan in 2007. I've been here on and off ever since. 19 years, 312 sorties, and every single time I'm in the air, I'm looking for him. I know he's not there. I know he's gone, but I look anyway. She turned back to Holt, and her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. That's why I don't have a wingman, because I can't lose anyone else. Holt left the chapel with a weight in his chest that hadn't been there before. He found Bishop and the rest of the team at the dining facility, pushing food around trays and not talking much. They looked up when he sat down. Bishop raised an eyebrow. "You find her?" Holt nodded. "Yeah, I found her." He told them what he'd learned, the story of the F-16 pilot and the woman who had spent 19 years trying to outrun grief. When he finished, the table was silent. Kim, who rarely spoke unless spoken to, said quietly, "That's why she stayed, in the valley. She wasn't going to let it happen again." Vargas nodded slowly. "She's been carrying that for 19 years, Jesus." Bishop crushed his cigarette into his tray, his jaw set. "We need to do something. They're going to ground her, and you know it. The brass doesn't like pilots who don't fit the mold. She's too good, too independent, and she makes them look bad. They'll find a reason." Holt stared at his hands, at the calluses and scars that came from a life spent holding weapons and making hard choices. He thought about the voice on the radio, calm and steady, promising not to leave. He thought about the A-10 circling in the dark, out of fuel, out of time, still there. He looked up. "We write a report, all of us. We detail exactly what she did, how she did it, and why we're alive because of it. We send it up the chain, and we copy every general, every congressman, every journalist we can think of. We make it impossible for them to bury her." Bishop grinned, the first real smile Holt had seen from him in days. "I like it. Make her